Hello friends, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about part 2 of the very basic functions of the Reserve Bank of India. In the previous daily dose we have discussed the history of RBI, how was RBI formed, how was the Imperial Bank formed, how was the State Bank of India formed, or the very basic history of State Bank of India, and when was RBI nationalized. After that we discussed various monetary policy committees, the monetary policies, then what are the main functions of the monetary policy committee, the monetary policy. So we have discussed open market operations, moral suasion, bank rate policy, and the reserve system. So today is part 2 of the Reserve Bank of India's very basic functions. Let's start with liquid adjustment facility. Liquid adjustment facility is the provision that RBI has to control the liquid money, that is cash or something that can be converted easily to cash, that kind of money in the banks or in the payment systems. So that is done by three rates mainly. Most importantly, the repo rate. Repo rate is the short form of repurchase rate. That is, if I lend money to, I in the sense if I am a bank and I lend money to RBI, then at what interest rate will I lend that money, or I'll borrow that money from RBI. So that's repo rate and reverse repo rate. And one more other thing, we'll discuss that. So repo rate is the rate at which the central bank of a country, that is in case of India, Reserve Bank of India, lends money to commercial banks in the event of any shortfall of funds. So suppose say I am running a bank. Okay, so I find that my bank is registered with the RBI, but now because there is some problem with say the economy, or maybe there is some policy change by the government, or maybe I have say good number of NPAs, as a result I can see in the next 1 or 2 years I am going to face shortfall of money. So what I can do, I can borrow money from the Reserve Bank of India. So the RBI will lend me money, okay, at a particular rate which is called the repo rate, the short form of the repurchase rate. Okay, now this monetary policy or the RBI actually controls inflation with the help of repo rate. You must have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, the repo rate was reduced regularly. Okay, it came to a very low position. Now, in case there is an inflation, say in case there is an inflation, that is the economy is growing really well. Okay, things are selling, consumers are purchasing things, and say the GDP rate is at a high. So what will I do? See, the associated problem with this is there will be inflation. That is, the price of things will go up. Okay, so people will be ready to buy more things because they have more money in their hands. So what will RBI do in this case? In this case, RBI will increase the repo rate, okay, and say that if you want to lend money from me, then you'll have to give me some extra interest. Okay, this acts as a disincentive for banks to borrow from the central bank. The banks will not wish to borrow from the central bank. What happens because of this? Banks have low amount of liquid money, that is cash, or mainly cash. So it will have less cash. So it will be able to fund investments less, and it will be able to lend money to consumers or investors less. As a result, this will arrest inflation. Now, in case there is, say, the economy is not going very well, something that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what will the RBI do? The RBI will continuously reduce the, the Monetary Policy Committee meets every 6 times every year, so every 2 months. So every time they'll reduce the repo rate. What happens? By reducing the repo rate, RBI is saying that, look, you bank, you can borrow money from me at a very low rate. So borrow money and pass it on to the consumers, to the investors, and to the organizations. Okay, so that there is more activity in the economy, people start buying more, and more jobs are created. So this is how they use repo rate to control the liquidity in the system. What is reverse repo rate? Reverse repo rate, as you can understand, is the opposite of repo rate. That is, this is the rate at which the RBI borrows money from the commercial banks in the country. Say Say RBI says that, okay, the government needs some funds, so I will borrow some money from the banks so that I can give this money to the government. Or the RBI say wants to buy some, say, government securities, or wants to invest in some foreign currency, so it can take some money from the banks. Or banks have lots of extra cash, they want to, say, probably stack it with the RBI. So what will they do? They will actually lend money to RBI. Okay, say the excess money they have, they'll lend it to RBI, generally for a short term. Like banks don't lend money to RBI for a long time, like this is for 10 years. No, they will usually lend it for a short time. The rate at which they lend money to the RBI, or the rate at which the RBI borrows, is the reverse repo rate. Okay, now if you see the last 5 years, then you will see that the gap between the repo rate and the reverse repo rate was low, say from the middle of August, but if you see now, it will be pretty high. Or if you till this graph is till April 20, so till April 20 it will be pretty high. What does that mean? What is the RBI trying to say? The RBI is trying to say that you don't station your money with us because we are going to give you low interests, so you rather invest it in the economy. But if you want to buy money from, if you want to take money from us, then we will give you at a pretty good rate. So the rate is higher would mean that they're trying to control the things, or probably trying to make an optimal situation of money lending and borrowing. Now the second thing, or the third thing in fact, that we have here is marginal standing facility rate, which is called MSF. Okay, now marginal standing facility is the rate at which any bank can borrow money from the RBI for a short term for emergency. Okay, like say there is some problem in the deposit lending equation. What does that mean? That probably I have given more loans to people and I expected some deposits to come, but those deposits did not come. As a result, I don't have any liquid cash left. I have lent everything and I do not have the deposits that they were coming. So I don't have money to, probably tomorrow some depositor comes and says that, okay, give me my money back. Then say I will not be able to return that money. So what does the banks do? They generally take a very short term loan, that is overnight loan from the RBI. Okay, at a rate slightly higher than the repo rate. Okay, you can see here, at a higher rate compared to the repo rate under the liquidity adjustment facility, generally the MSF is around 25 basis points. What is the meaning of 25 basis points? That if the repo rate is 4%, then it will be 4.25% more than the repo rate. So that is how it is. Now all the scheduled banks under RBI can avail this facility. Generally the maximum amount is 1% of their NDTL. NDTL, if you remember, net demand and time liabilities. Okay, the total liabilities that a bank has. So they can borrow that much amount. Okay. Now this particular loan, marginal standing facility, is taken in case of emergencies only. Now if a bank foresees that say 6 months or 1 year later there will be some shortage of cash, they can go for the repo rate and go for a long term borrowing facility. Okay, so these are the three things that RBI uses to adjust the liquidity in the system. The next thing that is there, that the next weapon that RBI has in its quiver, is the credit control policy. That is, RBI can actually decide how much credit will go to what sectors. Okay, so in this operation what RBI does is it actually creates a limit for credit. That it says that, okay, you are a bank, say you are ICICI Bank, you can lend only so much money to say real estate and this much money to agriculture. So if you want to lend to manufacturing, then you can lend say 10,000 crores. But if you want to lend to say something like cigarette manufacturing, then you can lend only 1,000 crores. So this kind of thing. In this case, commercial banks will be tight in advancing loans, isn't it? They will not be able to advance loans very easily. See, for example, say if you take cigarettes or alcohol, then they will sell at a very high rate and the loan will come back very easily. But when it comes to agriculture, sadly, that's not the situation. So banks will always have this tendency to lend to those organizations or those industries which bring back quick returns. RBI controls this through this facility. Okay, so under the credit ceiling, they can only lend certain amount of money to different sectors. Like you have credit ceilings for agricultural sector, or priority lending sector is there. In priority lending sectors, you can actually say MSMEs, you can lend a lot of money, but when it comes to thin good manufacturing, you cannot lend that much money, these kinds of things. The next thing that is there is credit authorization scheme. Credit authorization scheme means that certain banks are authorized to give credit to only particular sectors only. For example, if you take a bank like say HDFC can lend, say, this is not correct, but for an example, HDFC can only lend to realty sector. It cannot, the purpose of HDFC is to lend to realty sector. Or there are certain banks which lend only to say agricultural sector or certain priority sectors. Okay, so MSME, say the government starts an MSME bank tomorrow and says that okay, MSME banks can lend only to MSMEs and nobody else. So these are credit authorization schemes. Probably later when they want to diversify, they can actually lend to a few other sectors and slowly they can diversify and grow. So this is how this policy works. So that is basically the very basic functions of the RBI. Thank you.